Are slugs any good in sub 12 foot-pound air rifles? In this video, we will test accuracy, wind drift, and terminal ballistics to see if they can be used. There's a lot of discussion about it online. Some say you can, some say you can't. So let's have a look at that and let's draw some conclusions. So first up is the FX Streamline Light with a humor regulator. It has the latest heavy slug 177 barrel, which has got a 1 in 16 twist. So a fairly relatively fast twist rate. And these are being sent at just under 10 foot-pounds. So they came in at 9.8 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. There's more friction with slugs, so therefore you typically get a slightly lower velocity versus the same weight of pellet. As you can see, some pretty good groups here, and we're going to look a bit closer at them now. So well done, Zan, and for FX. That's a good combination. Really good group, really happy with that. In the worst case scenario, in HFT at 25 yards, easily going to hit a 15mm target. But what about further out, 50 yards now? So this target's right at the back of Pete's Airgun Farm in Chelmsford, Essex. Really fantastic place to do shooting, air rifle shooting. Really fantastic. Anyone who's ever been there will recognize this backdrop. And yeah, we're putting out 10 shots this time at that range. And you can already start to see here that it's grouping nicely. Next clip here coming up is a bit more zoomed in. I had a cheap GoPro type thing that ran out of battery, unfortunately, but for some of the later shots, but as you can see here, it's pretty damn good. So for HFT, which is 5 yards shorter range, 45 yards, all of these would be perfectly adequate in my opinion. All can be covered with 10 points apiece, maybe 2 or 3 times better in the wind than a pellet, following a very similar trajectory. So I think there's potential there. Next up is an AirTech Gene BSA Ultra SE with a DNT Zulus 5x20 scope. And we are shooting the 9.7 grain Pro Hunter slug. And we can see that it's doing well apart from a flyer. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. These are being sent at a very consistent 10.8 foot-pounds. So I actually shot 6 at this target because I wanted to get a 5-round group. There was a flyer. I believe that the BSA Ultra has a 1 in 16 twist like the FX Dream Launcher. I think it explains why it shoots them so well. But I'll be interested in the comments if that is actually the case. I do know they have a light choke. When I pull through to clean the barrel, there's really not much resistance at the end. So I think it's got a very light choke and a fast twist rate, and that explains how this can be sent so well. So we're back out at the 50-yard range, and we can see quite quickly that these are landing really close to each other, and I got pretty excited at this point, thinking, well, I may have found a perfect slug here. Really performing as good, if not better, than a lot of pellets. So the first 5 or so really tight group, and then it started to open out a little bit. And I have a theory for that I wanted to cover when we look a bit closer. This is a little bit zoomed in. You can kind of get a good idea on the drop at this range in terms of mil dots. These were sent at a very consistent 10.8 foot-pounds, so about a 0.7 loss of foot-pounds at the muzzle. Looking a bit closer, you can see the 5 that are touching each other, and super happy with that. The whole group is almost covered by a 5p piece, and you can see that a couple of flyers high left, which actually, I think this is a launch error, as they resemble the 25 yards target. You've got a cluster, nice tight group, and then a couple high left. And that's because whether or not it's a magazine or a single shot loader with BSA, they are pushing through an O-ring. And I think that that's putting them at a wonky angle. Unless, of course, you have a single shot version of the BSA series. Moving on to a slightly heavier slug from Pro Hunter, 10.5 grain. And what we can see here is a fairly good group emerging. So I'd say that's perfectly adequate for hunting HFT at 25 yards. Let's see what it can do at 50 yards. So in case you're wondering, these are being sent at 10.6 foot-pounds. Again, very, very consistent. And that is 675 feet per second. So you have probably around a foot-pound loss of muzzle and G at the barrel compared to a JSB heavy 10.34 grain. If you're sending them at 11.6, maybe 11.8 foot-pounds. For me, this is relevant because let's supposing that you tuned your rifle for the slugs, you might find yourself in a difficult situation if the rifle is tested using, say, a JSB 10.34 grain, because you could put it over the limit. Another decent group. Now, you might be thinking you've got a rifle that's shooting pellets that all of them fall within that 5p group size. I can totally see that happening. I've seen it many times, done it many times, but really, how tight do you need the group for hunting purposes? I would say it's perfectly adequate. It's more now to do with how well does it take wind and how well does it retain energy. So on that note, here we are outside a Pizza Gun Farm, and you can see it's saying it's been rangefind at 62 yards. 62 yards. It's actually probably around 62 and a half, 63. And this gives a good indication of the drop and how accurate these things can be sent in real world conditions. So let's look at the slow-mo here. So that's perfect elevation, and that's using a ballistic coefficient G1 of 0.05, which is approximately twice as good as a JSB heavy 10.34 grain. So here you can see the wind state left to right crossing. So if we take note of that, and what I wanted to do is, I hadn't captured the flag in the previous footage, so we're doing the same thing again. So we're doing a sighter at this black target at the bottom. You can see where it's hit before, so exactly the same thing. There we go, pretty much hit the same spot. I would like to add that I wouldn't be taking this shot in real life. It is too far, especially in these conditions. I really not that comfortable taking anything in sub 12, anything beyond 60 yards, 60 yards, and that's a real stretch. So again, hit the target again on the second shot. On the third shot, didn't give it quite enough windage. So giving it a little smidgen more windage to reset the this rabbit target. I'm going to talk a little bit about the rabbit target soon in this video. It's relevant because of the kill zone size. So that's reset. Take note of how far we're aiming off, because we're going to compare this directly with the 22 in a minute. So here's now comparison with the 22, and again, wind, direction, speed is broadly the same. And we're keeping things super fair. So we've got the same optics, make and model. We've got the same rifle make and model. And this BSA Ultra is sending a JSB 16 grain 2 caliber pellet at 11.5 foot-pounds. We can see there's substantially more drop as what you would expect, as it's traveling slower. It's pretty accurate. We are having to give more wind in order to hit the target, as you can see. Approximately twice as much. We have to aim off twice as much. So let's now compare side by side in real time. So now for testing with some ballistic gelatine. This is super easy to make. If there's demand in the comments, then I'll show a video on it. First attempt failed. Everything just went straight through 6 inches of ballistic gel at 25 yards like it was nothing. So I got a real rabbit pelt and 1.8mm applied to simulate rabbit's skull. Put that in front of 8 inches of ballistic gelatin, and it captured most of them, which is good. The 10.34 grain JSB Heavy and a 10.5 grain Crossman Premier just went straight through the whole lot, which I just couldn't believe. I was quite surprised to see that most of the pellets and slugs kind of penetrated about the same distance. This is an 8.4 grain Barracuda 8, and it penetrated about the same as the 16 grain 2.2 JSB. I found that surprising because you hear that the 177s penetrate more, but I found that was only the case with the heavy 177 pellets. Important to note that the slugs tumbled, whereas the pellets didn't. Typically, the slugs would yaw and tumble, which would necessarily create a bigger wound channel than a 177 pellet, possibly about the same as a 22. And the slug on the far left is the Zan lead-free, which ended up arse first in this jar. So when I mentioned about the kill zone on the rabbit target, the reason for that is that if you take, in this case, a 3D printed rabbit skull, you'll see that it's about the right size and shape. And the kill zone is about the right size as well. We want to be hitting this area here. But important to note is anyone new to rabbit shooting is you do not want to be hitting, you don't want to be aiming here. You want to be aiming here. So this part of the rabbit's head. And when we measure that, it's probably about an inch, just over an inch. It's about what you need. So when we take this measurement for a rabbit's skull and 50 yards, the Zan 8.5 grain comfortably within that kill zone. Rabbit Pro Hunter Slugs 10.5 grains, and the 9.7 grains. So 10 out of the 10 shots would have killed that rabbit if you got it on target. I did test some other rifles and some other slugs, and the Pro Hunter 9.5 grain, for whatever reason, at 50 yards I couldn't get it within that kill zone, that size needed. What was pretty good was the 16 grain, but I'd probably argue that what is the benefit of that? You kind of might as well use a 2.2, other than it's going to be way better in the wind. So what are the downsides to using slugs in Sub12 177? You do lose some muzzle energy, and they may not be as accurate as the most accurate pellet that you can find for your rifle paired with your barrel, and more expensive, especially the Pro Hunter ones, and you have to spend quite a lot of time to find the right combination, and some other tips and techniques that I will share in future videos. So they're the downsides, but do the advantages outweigh the downsides? And I think they do. I now exclusively use slugs for hunting, and I've seen potential to use them for HFT as well. So that's what I tend to do, more testing. A key takeaway also is this idea that there seems to be an obsession with power and getting as close to the 12 foot-pounds limit as possible. Really looking at the ballistic testing, you really don't need that. 10 foot-pounds seems perfectly adequate to reach out to 50 yards to dispatch most things, most small quarry. If anything, there's over penetration. Compared to a 2.2, I think that you've got the best of both worlds. You've got a projectile that flies flatter than a 2.2 pellet that hits as hard, if not harder, and because of the better ballistic coefficient, and is better in the wind. I think the video of looking at I'll put up the stats from chair gun, either twice as good or maybe 3 times as good as pellets. So I hope this video has been interesting, informative, a bit of an eye-opener. Like I said, I've been hunting with them for the last year or so, and I've seen a lot of comments online saying you can't do it. And I wanted to say, well, how do we show that we can do it? in particular circumstances. As a general rule, I would say they're not suitable. They can get stuck in some barrels, especially ones with tighter chokes. And so it's really kind of the limit cases. Is there are exceptions to that rule. And anyone got any suggestions for future videos, please let me know. Thank you.